I picked up a hitchhiker outside Valdosta, Georgia, and 3 months later I got a postcard from him with no return address, and I still don't know how he got my P.O. box number. I never gave it to him. This was 2 summers ago. I was 23, driving alone from Cincinnati down to my aunt's place near Tampa, doing the whole trip in one straight shot, because I'm stubborn like that, and I didn't want to pay for a motel. Somewhere around 11 hours into the drive, way past the point where you should still be driving, I saw a guy on the shoulder with a duffel bag and his thumb out. I want to be clear, I don't normally pick up hitchhikers. My dad would have had a heart attack if he knew. But it was almost 1 a.m. There was nothing around for miles except pine trees and the hum of my own tires, and something about how tired he looked made me pull over before I even really decided to. His name was Wyatt, or that's what he told me. Mid-30s maybe, quiet in a way that wasn't awkward, just still. He said his car broke down about 10 miles back, and he was trying to get to a cousin's place in Lake City. We talked a little, mostly about nothing, the kind of small talk you make with a stranger at 1 a.m. when you're both running on fumes. He had this way of looking at me sideways when I talked, not creepy exactly, just attentive, like he was studying me. About 40 minutes in, he said something that I didn't think much of at the time. He said,
"Your mom's gonna be worried if you don't call her when you stop."
I hadn't mentioned my mom, not once. I remember this specific flicker of a thought. Did I say something about her? Did it come up? I genuinely could not remember bringing her up, but I told myself I must have, because what's the alternative, right? People say things and forget. I was exhausted. I let it go. We stopped at a gas station near Lake City so I could get coffee and let him grab whatever he needed for the rest of his walk. The guy behind the counter, older guy, kind of a rough face, looked past me at Wyatt standing by the door, and his whole expression changed. Not scared exactly, but careful, like he recognized him. I paid for my coffee and the guy whispered, almost like he didn't want Wyatt to hear it, "You alone with him?" I said yeah, I was giving him a ride, and the guy just nodded slowly and said, "Okay," in this tone that did not sound okay at all. I want to be honest with you, I almost didn't get back in the car. I stood by the pump for a second longer than I needed to, telling myself I was being paranoid, that the clerk was probably just some small-town guy who eyes anybody he doesn't recognize, that I was reading way too much into a 2-word exchange. I was very tired, and it was dark too, so I got back in car. The rest of the drive to Lake City, Wyatt got quieter. Not hostile, just quiet in a way that filled up the car differently than before. At one point I glanced at him and he was already looking at me, and he smiled and said,
"You don't remember me, do you?"
I said, "What do you mean?" And he just shook his head and said,
"Nothing, never mind,"
and looked back out the window like he hadn't said anything at all. I dropped him at the intersection he asked for, some dark crossroads with nothing around, no houses, no lights, nothing that looked like it led to a cousin's place or anywhere at all. He thanked me, got out, and before he shut the door he leaned back in and said,
"Tell your mom I said hi."
Then he shut the door and walked off into the dark, and I sat there for a solid 30 seconds before I could make myself drive away. I told myself for weeks that I must have mentioned my mom somewhere in that 40 minutes of small talk. I've gone over that conversation in my head so many times that I've probably rewritten it by now, and I still can't find the moment where it would have come up. Then, about 3 months later, I got a postcard in my P.O. box with no return address, a photo of a beach on the front, and, on the back, just one line, in handwriting which I didn't recognize. It says, "Glad you made it home safe." At that point I was literally cooked. I don't have a P.O. box listed anywhere public. My aunt is the only person who knew that address, and it wasn't her handwriting. That summer, I moved to a new apartment and changed my number too. I still think about that stretch of road outside Lake City sometimes, especially on long drives at night, and I still don't have an explanation for how a stranger I gave a 40-minute ride to knew where to find me 3 months later. I never picked up another hitchhiker again. I was driving through Arizona alone at 2 in the morning when I saw a car stop dead in the middle of the highway with its hazards blinking and nobody inside it. And to this day I have no idea what happened to whoever was driving it. This was on a trip out to visit a friend in Flagstaff, summer before last. I like driving at night. I always have. Something about the empty roads and the radio static settles me. I was cutting through this stretch of nothing on Route 191, way out past any town with an actual name, when my gas light came on. gone. I found a station that was somehow still open, one of those places that's more of a shack with 2 pumps than an actual gas station. Fluorescent light buzzing over the door, a bell that rattled when I walked in. The guy behind the counter didn't look up right away. When he did, he had this expression that I can only describe as tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. I asked for a pack of gum and a bottled water, and while he was ringing it up, he asked, "You headed north on 191? I said, "Yeah." He nodded slow and said, "Don't stop for anybody out there tonight, even if it looks like they need help." I laughed a little, because I thought he was messing with me. Small town guy having some fun with a tourist. He didn't laugh back. He just said, "I mean it. Some nights that road gets weird. Just get where you're going." I got back in my car feeling a little unsettled, but mostly just chalking it up to a bored guy working a graveyard shift in the middle of nowhere. The kind of person who probably says something spooky to every out-of-towner that walks through his door for entertainment. I've worked jobs like that. You get weird with boredom. I told myself that the whole way back to the highway, and honestly, I half believed it. About 20 minutes north, I came around a bend and there it was. A car stopped in the middle of my lane, hazards blinking, headlights on, engine clearly still running because I could see the exhaust curling up behind it in my high beams. No other cars anywhere, no lights from a house, no cell service, nothing. I slowed way down, and I could see there was nobody in the driver's seat, nobody in the passenger seat either. Doors closed, just an empty running car sitting dead center in the lane like whoever was driving it had stopped, gotten out, and vanished. I sat there for a second not knowing what to do. Every instinct told me to get out and check, because what if someone needed help? What if someone had a medical emergency and wandered off the road? But that guy's voice was in my head. Don't stop for anybody, even if it looks like they need help. And something about the stillness of that empty car, hazards ticking in the dark, made my stomach drop in a way I couldn't rationalize away. I edged around it on the shoulder, glancing in every direction for a person, a flashlight, or anything, but found nothing. Just desert and dark, and that one car glowing behind me in my mirrors as I pulled away. I told myself I'd call it in once I had signal, and I was already constructing the story in my head. Some totally normal explanation. Car trouble, somebody hiking to find help, somebody's friend already came and picked them up. I wanted so badly for it to be nothing. About 10 minutes later, I noticed headlights behind me. Same distance the whole time, not gaining, not falling back, just locked in behind me like it was tethered to my bumper. I sped up. The gap stayed exactly the same. When I slowed down, still same distance. For almost 40 miles, those headlights sat behind me at what felt like the exact same distance no matter what I did. And I could never see anything about the car itself, just 2 white points hanging in my mirror like they belonged to nothing at all. When I finally hit a stretch with a gas station and other cars around, I pulled in fast, hands shaking on the wheel, and when I looked back at the road, the headlights were gone. Not pulled off somewhere, not past me, just gone, like they'd switched off the second I found people again. I got cell signal there and called it in, told the dispatcher about the empty car back on 191. She took my information and said someone would check it out. I never heard anything back. I looked up local news for weeks after. Any mention of an abandoned vehicle, a missing person, anything, nothing ever came up. I don't know if that means somebody found their way home safe, or if it means nobody ever went looking in the right place. I haven't driven that stretch of road since, and I don't think I ever will again. My GPS rerouted us through a town that doesn't exist on any map I've checked since, and I have a photo from that night that I can't explain, because there's someone standing in the background of it who wasn't there when the photo was taken. Me, my friend Mara, and her boyfriend Leo were driving from Nashville up toward the Smokies for a long weekend, cutting through back roads because Mara likes the scenery more than the interstate. Somewhere in the mountains, our GPS lost signal and rerouted us onto this narrow 2-lane road that climbed and climbed with nothing but trees on either side. We joked about it at first, the kind of joking you do when you're a little nervous but don't want to say so out loud. Leo kept saying we were in a horror movie, and none of us thought much of it, because that's just something you say. Eventually the trees broke open and we came into this little town, if you could even call it that. A gas station, a diner with a hand-painted sign, a handful of houses set back from the road. No people outside anywhere, even though it was early evening, that time when small towns are usually still moving around a little. The gas station attendant was a woman, maybe 50s, who came out to greet us before we'd even fully parked, smiling in this way that felt just slightly too wide, too immediate, like she'd been waiting for us specifically. She asked where we were headed, and when Mara told her, she said, "Oh, you don't want to be on that road after dark. Why don't you stay here tonight? We've got a motel just up the way." We should have just filled up and kept driving. I want to be honest about that. But it was getting dark fast. None of us wanted to navigate an unfamiliar mountain road at night, and the woman was so friendly about it, so insistent in this warm, grandmotherly way, that it felt rude to say no. Leo made a joke about it being exactly what people say in movies right before something terrible happens, and we all laughed, and I remember specifically thinking, we'll laugh about this later. This is nothing. The motel was small, one of those roadside strips with doors facing the parking lot, and it was the only building in town with its lights fully on. The man who checked us in didn't say much, just handed over a key and told us breakfast was at 7. Our room smelled like old carpet and something underneath that I couldn't place, something faintly sour. Mara said she felt like people were watching us the whole time we unloaded the car, and I remember agreeing with her but not wanting to say it out loud, because saying it out loud makes it real. Around midnight, Leo woke Mara and me up because he heard something outside our door. Footsteps, slow, stopping directly in front of our room and staying there. We all sat frozen, listening, and after what felt like a full minute, whoever it was walked away. We told ourselves it was another guest, somebody going to get ice, or somebody who couldn't sleep. None of us said what we were actually thinking, which was that there hadn't been another car in that parking lot besides ours. I took a photo that night, right before we went to bed, just a dumb picture of the three of us being goofy to remember the trip by. I didn't look at it closely until weeks later, back home, scrolling through my camera roll. In the background, through the window behind us, there's a figure standing in the parking lot, facing our room directly. None of us remember seeing anyone out there. I've zoomed in on that photo more times than I want to admit, and I still can't make out a face, just a shape that is unmistakably a person, standing still, facing our window, at an hour when we were the only guests in that motel. We left at first light the next morning, and the whole town felt different in daylight, smaller somehow, less real. The gas station woman waved at us as we drove past like she'd known us for years. About a month after we got home, I tried to find that town again just out of curiosity. Tried looking it up by the name on the motel receipt. It doesn't come up, not on any map, not in any search, nothing. Mara says maybe I'm remembering the name wrong. Maybe I am, but I still have the receipt, and I still have that photo, and neither of those things has an explanation I can live with.